Hit me with your best shot. Oh, won't you hit me with your best shot? Hit me with your best shot. Fire away. We're recording. Okay, well, let's do this then. Welcome back to the third episode of Hard Talks Podcast. And get ready, honey bunnies, for another trip down the rabbit hole. If you're over on YouTube, I see you. I really do. And thank you for watching. If you want to hurry and click that like and subscribe button to support the show, it would truly make my day. But today's already a good day. Bad day, depending on what you learn or take away from this. But today we're going to go even deeper into the underworld of white-collar corruption and potential world domination. We'll talk about the second family associated with longtime rumors of being one out of 5 most powerful families to allegedly rule the world. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. You can go back to episode 2 and listen. I recommend it because you probably won't know what we're going to talk about. There's a lot of tie-ins here, and we're just jumping in. Also, the opinions expressed within this podcast are solely the author's, aka mine. And they do not reflect the opinions and beliefs of the websites or the affiliates that the information was pulled from, okay? Okay. On that note, if you don't agree with anything I have to share, how great is this? It's an opportunity you can share with me. If you have anything to add, comments, questions, concerns, you can kindly share them with me at hardtalkswithbnh@gmail.com or over on the social medias at Hard Talks Podcast. But remember, here at Hard Talks, we will treat all conspiracies as such, or air quotes, rumors, as, you know, they may never be confirmed or denied. It is all speculation. I'm not here saying it's all true, and I'm not going to pretend like I know everything. That's the farthest thing from the truth. There is a cloudiness that shrouds a lot of these theories. The evidence just starts to stack up against these guys over the years. That's all I'm saying. You know, they have a great power and ability to suppress the truth. So, however you filter the following information is totally up to you, cool cats. Either way, it's a pretty good story. So, buckle in. Enough of that bullsharky. Continuing our corruption saga with the second family. And now I don't mean to be dramatic, but I'm good at it. It's my job here. This episode actually affects us all to this very day. So pay attention. You know, like the Rothschilds might have this crazy control. They affect us. This family affects us in a different way. And who am I talking about? Well, let me tell you. Let's welcome to the stage, bam, 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 the DuPont family. Have you ever heard of these guys? Spelled D-U-P-O-N-T. You know someone's probably a little pretentious when they have a capital in the middle of the name, but just kidding. But these mates are French. Oui, oui. And funny story. I take my glasses off because I made my point. The only reason I already knew this last name was not because I heard this family's greatness or the influence they had in our history or society, but because of a scandal. Yes, a scandal. And before you get too excited, it's not like a scandal. Wink, wink, my Vanderpump peeps. It is a cover-up so large that it still afflicts us to this day. I'm not kidding, it's terrifying, but more on that specifically later. If you're on the flip-flop, freaking out a little bit, like, who are these guys? I've never heard of them. It's okay, sugar. You are not alone in this. Most people haven't even heard the name DuPont, but once you hear what I have to tell you, once you hear what these guys have been accused of or what they've actually done, you're going to be like, oh my God, Alicia. And I'm going to be like, I know. Aren't you glad we found each other? Me too. So here's the skinny besties. The DuPont family owns the nation's oldest billion-dollar fortune and is considered the most prominent industrial dynasty in the U.S., meaning these fellers got hella rich during the Industrial Revolution, and they're still monopolizing many industries to this day. Sounds familiar. This family has a very public image, probably because they can't help but get sued every other year, and you'll learn why. And yet, they still have a very private life. Like, doing research for these guys was harder than the Rothschilds. But a lot of conspiracies point that they're heavily involved in the Illuminati and other secret societies. And again, like the Rothschilds, they've been subject to numerous conspiracies throughout the generations. It's like, you don't want people to talk, then don't be so naughty. You know? Why are you being so naughty? Stop. The DuPont bloodline conspiracy theory is basically saying that this family is part of secret societies with roots stretching back to European nobility, and that they exert significant influence over the American government and financial system today. And while all theories have been discredited, it sounds pretty frickin' similar, doesn't it? Yeah. It's because these guys are all besties for the resties, and you're going to hate them all by the end of these episodes. I'm sorry. Sorry to break the news to you. But the theory has been fueled by various pieces of evidence. You know, it doesn't come from nowhere, including the very real existence of DuPont family members within the secret societies. That's, you know, not speculation. There is documented history of DuPonts in these societies. So we'll get into that. They also own, operate, and serve on the boards of most corporations funding campaigns, both Democratic and Republican. You know, red and blue doesn't matter to these folks if you haven't quite caught on. Control does. They've also held numerous positions of power themselves, like governors, senators, you know, some even vice presidents. The family has been subject of numerous investigations, lawsuits, and audits over the ages. And, you know, before you're like, oh, goody, this is different. These investigations never really found anything, or they always ended up settling in court for copious amounts of money, sure, but they never really took accountability. You know, I don't know. But to understand them today, we have to understand them from the beginning, like any good story. The DuPont Dynasty really began with one man. Again. We meet Eleuthère Irénée DuPont, and I'm sorry if I hacked that, I don't speak French, but he was a son of a French immigrant who fled to America after he was a POW in the French Revolution. He actually gained his initial wealth after founding a gunpowder factory in Delaware that went on to actually sell the highest quality of gunpowder on the market and become our military's leading supplier from like the 1800s to today. This guy would also go on to own the empire that invented such things like nylon and Teflon, that non-sticky crap on all of our pans, Kevlar, like that shit bullets can't shoot through. I mean, that's cool. They also began manufacturing dynamite, which we all know is not only vital to the war, but is in the construction of railroads and mining. And Eleuthère easily set up his empire through supplying wars and by monopolizing the powder and dynamite industry. Like, whoop, easy peasy. I don't get it. Now they teach us in basic history that monopolies were abolished, right? There's all these acts and stuff set in place to prevent them to share parts of the pie, yeah? But when you own all the politicians and know all the right people, it doesn't really matter, does it? No. Throughout the years, the company has changed hands to the next generations, but they've maintained their stronghold by modernizing the factories to keep up and stay relevant, you know. It was actually in 1872 that Henry DuPont commissioned for this Gunpowder Trade Association to help eliminate any competition between him and these two other top manufacturing companies. And, I mean, they were so powerful, they kind of had no choice. You know, they agreed to share the market, but it was shitty for them because DuPont eventually bought them out anyways. And it was ruthless, you know, this trend of cutthroat industry takeovers and unapologetic business practices continue to be synonymous with the family and their many businesses today. Eleutheré's family grew grow, did they? You know what I'm saying? By also promoting in-family marriages. Great. Which is a really nice way of putting incest. That's like taking that saying, keep it in the family, to like a whole nother level. Greedy bastards don't want to dilute their money. After this became illegal and socially unacceptable, as it should, they arranged marriages within other elite families they worked closely with, like the Morgans, the Bushes, etc. But their roots in the United States high political society really grew after they allegedly funded the U.S. to purchase that little territory down south. And I'm not talking about your peach babies. It's what we all know today as Louisiana, back in 1803. If you are ever curious as to why there is such a heavy French influence in Louisiana, especially in New Orleans, it's because we kind of took it from Napoleon. Well, and all the poor, innocent, indigenous people that lived in the area before that were shamelessly murdered by past insane President Andrew Jackson and such other people. But yeah, Napoleon, that angry short French guy we talked about last week. I mean, between Britain and the US, we broke his complex, if you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. But like the Rothschilds, again, all this is ongoing at the same time, while our shoddy Nadine M. Rothschild is about to take action towards one of the biggest stock market schemes in arguably the market's history, if it turned out to be true, became godlike wealthy from it. The DuPonts were conveniently staked in America, passively fighting in the same Napoleonic Wars by conveniently sliding in and taking over Louisiana's French territories at the time. So one could say the DuPonts were already acting on the Rothschilds' behalf in the U.S., because it would not only keep spreading their vast control, but the Rothschilds and the DuPonts, would profit greatly from the war. Absolutely. Because, pop quiz, what did we learn last week? How does the United States make the most money? I'm listening. War! Good God, Lord! What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again. No, actually, war is extremely profitable. Actually, you guys should go watch one of my favorite movies, War Dogs. Big hearts for Miles Teller. But it's based on a true story, and it describes war profiteering perfectly in like the first 1.5 minutes. But during times of conflict or war, the arms and ammunitions market is heavily inflated. And at the beginning of the Iraqi war in 2001-ish, there weren't any regulations really for international arms dealers. So these 20-something-year-old potheads get effing rich, like millionaire rich overnight, just by selling, to quote them, the pie crumbs. I should do a whole episode on government contractors, but sorry, I'm getting off track. All I'm getting at is the war industry is a trip. It truly is an economy. And to actually quote the movie War Dogs, anyone who tells you otherwise is either in on it or stupid. So, here's just another example of a rich family backing a cause and getting richer. Thanks, Louisiana. Nice to meet ya. By the beginning of the First World War, the family company called DuPont produced 40% of the world's explosive during World War I, to Allied forces, of course. At that time, the DuPonts admitted to having over 9 million surplus in its treasury, and as a result, they actually absorbed GM. Like General Motors, think Chevy, Cadillac, GMC, Buick. So that's huge. And then during the Second World War, the DuPonts reportedly produced 4.5 billion pounds of explosives during the course of the war. All right, that's a lot of pounds. They also participated in this little project called the Manhattan Project. You know, that insignificant little one that constructed the nuclear bomb. Have you guys seen Oppenheimer? It's like 3.5 hours of, I have to pee. But between the Rockefeller Foundation and funding the construction and DuPont Chemical supplying all the plutonium necessary to successfully create the atomic bomb, they made the construction of it possible. Absolutely. And then after they dropped it in Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, respectfully, killing over 110,000 people, mostly civilians, there were a lot of unsettled feelings, you could say, about their involvement. Many celebrated them and chalked their investments to the war efforts as patriotic or heroic, but I think it's safe to say that we can only assume their real motives behind their involvement in something so destructive. Sure, it won the war, but at what cost? Well, none to them, actually. They profited, so there's that. As if these guys weren't already douche of the year, it's time we talk about their chemical business. Say hello to DuPont Chemical. The American government had seized a bunch of cool German patents during the wars. And they were like, hey, well, why don't we give them to DuPont Chemical? You know, they're like totally innovative with all that crap, right? It was these patents that went on to create some very cool, very important things we use like every day. To name a few: shatterproof glass, photographic film, nylon, lycra, which you may have never heard of, but all of us girlies know it and love it, or maybe even wear it every day if they're anything like me. Lycra is the elastic fiber used especially for swimming suits, sports clothing, spandex, yoga pants. We love that. We can at least thank them for those. But they also continue to innovate in the production of making other materials out of unnatural crap, like paints and dyes, and rubber was a big one. Cleaning supplies, chemicals for cleaning supplies, drugs, basically everything that's useful. But this is where I blow your guys' mind, okay? Every American has a DuPont product of some sort sitting in their house somewhere right now. I'm not even joking. Go look under your kitchen sink or wherever you keep your cleaning supplies. It was in the 20th century that they developed groundbreaking mini polymers, is what they were called, like thermalite, Vespol, neoprene, corian, Zendrine. Pretty much everything we use has one or more of their polymers in it. Like even like our shampoos, soaps, makeups, it's in everything. And then that ties them back to the Rockefellers and the Bush's oil, because a lot of their products are derivatives from petroleum products. So, they all kind of benefit from it. Now, here's the scandal I mentioned. The scandal, the one I initially learned about the DuPonts from. Back in the 1990s, and what a glorious decade that was, a farmer in West Virginia, his name was Wilbur Tennant. He started noticing a lot of scary activity on his farm after selling a portion of his land to DuPont Chemical. And they needed the money. Times were tough. And this company was the crown jewel of this town, okay? In fact, it employed most of the town, even the farmer's brother. So they trusted it. I mean, why wouldn't they? But sometime after they sold a portion of their land, Wilbur started finding his cattle dead by the creek with blood and foam coming out of their mouths. And Wilbur had grown up around cattle his whole life, okay? He had seen many dead cows over the years, but there was something unnatural about the way that these cows were dying. And he knew that nothing had changed on his side of the farm, except, we sold that portion of the land off by that very creek right there to DuPont. He knew something bigger was at play, and it's a good thing he listened to his gut, because he went to the police and all these townspeople, reporters, journalists, but they all shrugged him off, and maybe even a little put off, because again, DuPont Chemical meant everything to this community. It was the majority's livelihood. But in search for the truth, Wilbur took matters into his own hands. Nobody would listen to him, so he started recording dissections of many of his cattle on VHS tapes for proof and whatnot. He found many of their organs were like up, discolored, either enlarged, misshapen. Some of their teeth had even turned completely black or rotted away completely. It wasn't until a large number of Wilbur's cattle had either died or started mutating, growing growths, losing patches of hair, running themselves into friggin' barn walls, agitated by the day and literally going mad. When people finally started paying attention to this. It's just so frustrating for Wilbur. But, all this finally brought enough attention to attorneys. They felt bad for Wilbur. They were also sus of DuPont, and, they would actually see him through this lengthy investigation and, later this litigation process that would take decades. But it turned out their suspicions were absolutely on point because DuPont wasn't as stand-up as everyone thought. They took some dire shortcuts. Weird. It's actually really hard to get rid of toxic waste properly, and it's very expensive. So, what do rich bastards who want to save on what would be like pennies to them do? Well, they start dumping their chemical waste into the creek bed that ran into Farmer Wilbur Tennant's property, eventually killing off all of his livestock, of course. Not only that, since DuPont Chemical had been dumping their chemical waste, FYI, it was unregulated. It was known as PFOA, to be specific. They've been dumping this PFOA into this creek for decades. And I said decades. And it soaked into the region's water supply, their soil, and by default affecting their livestock and agriculture. And while I know you're probably all like, what the hell? Apparently, DuPont had known how dangerous this initially unknown chemical PFOA was. And they'd known how dangerous it was for a very long time. PFOA is needed to make that magic chemical I mentioned, Teflon, that non-stick on all our pans, okay? And you're supposed to dispose of it very, very carefully because when mixed with water, it becomes highly contaminated and poisonous when consumed. Now, these attorneys working on the tenant's behalf were absolutely overloaded with rooms full of boxed evidence. Put air quotes around evidence, okay? The DuPont's attorneys sent over so much paperwork to try and drown them, This is a litigation tactic to try and slow down the investigation, to dilute the hard-hitting truths, if you will. But after many months and enormous effort, they uncovered the undeniable, scary truth, written in black and white. They learned the DuPont Parkersburg facility alone had been dumping tens of thousands of pounds of PFOA powder into the Ohio River for decades, polluting the local drinking supply to over 100,000 people in West Virginia. Watch out, West Virginia. Now get this. When lawyers are sorting through Mount Everest piles of paperwork from DuPont's attorneys, they also find that DuPont had their own doctors and chemists and scientists conduct their own little medical study on the effects of PFOA for over, drumroll please, wrong drumroll, 40 years. Okay, did you hear? 40 years. I'm done. That's insane. 40 years. Hold on, let me take a smoke break for that. I'm sorry, y'all, but if you still don't think these mother truckers are at the very least shady, I'm sorry, sweeties, but you need to find a new definition. That is insanity. It's disgusting. According to DuPont's own study, okay? They knew that PFOA could increase the size of liver in rats, rabbits, and dogs. They knew that all their employees would unknowingly be poisoned by coming to work every day, as PFOA was found in all their blood samples that they took. I wonder if they knew that they, anyway, tested them for that. But it gets worse, baby, so hang in there. They found it caused birth defects in rats, so DuPont ran tests on employees' children. Like, I wonder what they had to say to get everyone to come in. Like, free flu shots, pew. Like, what the They were too busy to disclose their findings for 40 years, I guess, okay? Are you following me? These sons of knew they were poisoning everyone because of the results of a study they conducted, and they still chose to keep it hush-hush. There's no conspiracy there, sugar. Anyway, they found in these tests that 2 out of 7 of the employees' children were born with eye defects. Like, it's giving a mixture of Aaron Brockovich because of the poison water, and Hills have eyes because of the deformities. You see what I see there? Yeah, but DuPont scientists, yes, this is still their own company's findings, concluded that PFOA would result in a number of cancers in lab animals and most likely cause prostate cancer in humans. So let's keep using it. Now, obviously, these findings were brought to the DuPont's attention, but they continued business as usual, knowingly dumping high concentrated amounts of PFOA into Wilbur's land and to the rest of the public. Okay? But it doesn't end there. This blatant negligence resulted in a contagion. Water spreads. What happens when you spill it? Before you know it, it poisons us all. But nobody's talking about this. No. It's a drag. Boo-hoo. But before you're like, how'd they get away with this, Alicia? Tell me. Well, they still are. In addition to having great ties to politicians, they also have outstanding relationships with entire organizations. Organizations like the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. I actually think of the grandpa from the Simpsons movie screaming, EPA! EPA! When they come take over the town. But most of the time, these relationships involve great deals of money, duh. And if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. But also, because as the law stands today, the EPA can't even investigate or evaluate a chemical unless they have cause to think it's harmful. I know. Useless. And since the DuPonts forgot to mention their secret team of scientists and a whole freaking study that lasted for over 40 years, I cannot get over that. They just forgot to mention that for over 40 years, the government says that they never had cause to investigate. But we know their big chemical companies make these chemicals, avoiding any go-betweens, any middlemen, so no one else knows what's inside of them. But they do. They know what's inside these things. They know how dangerous this crap is when they produce it. But they aren't required by law to disclose that information unless it's suspected to be harmful. Okay, that's garbage. So that does a lot of good, right? It doesn't. They control the proof of harm as well as the truth as a whole. It's dumpster fire. This was a mass poisoning, and most people have never heard of it. And without Wilbur Tennant and his poor lost cows, it may have gone unwarranted for God knows how long. It's still kind of brushed under the rug, and was with a $16.5 million settlement with the EPA. Chump change to this family. I mean, they paid it off with 2% of the profits they made that year. It was nothing to them. A civil action lawsuit was also made against the DuPont family, or DuPont Chemical, and that was actually settled September 2004. The total settlement came to a whopping $21.7 million. And notice how much time has passed. Okay, these poor people. DuPont was required to add filtration systems to all the affected areas and all their facilities and pay medical for any persons affected. They were also subject to an open-ended investigation, and they were required to pay for a medical study, resulting in an additional $33 million. But this medical study, you guys, took over 7 years to complete. And over the course of that time, many of these people were diagnosed with cancer. Even Wilbur the farmer had cancer. He eventually died of a heart attack, but then his wife, Farmer Wilbur's wife, would go on to die from cancer 2 years later. And at this point, you might be thinking, thank God I don't live in West Virginia or on the East Coast. Sorry, West Virginia. Or thank goodness this was nearly 30 years ago. But it's said that PFOA made its way into our American blood banks. People who had consumed PFOA, who obviously didn't know that they had poison in their blood, donated. So you see, this opens a whole new can of worms. By 2003, it's estimated that the average American adult had a concentration of PFOA in their blood of 4 to 5 parts per billion. In America today, it said every person has PFOA in their blood. The chemical has also been found in over 94 water districts across 27 different states, not only making us people sick, but also our ecosystems. You know, they found PFOA in turtles and many kinds of fish, and salmon, and polar bears, some birds, manatees, seals. In a recent study, they also found that the effects of these chemicals range from immune deficiencies, low sperm counts, lower sperm mobility, infertility, and even, sorry guys, smaller penises. So if we have some feelings about our wanks, maybe you can blame the DuPonts for that also. I don't know. In October 2016, over 3,000 people filed personal injury lawsuits against DuPont Chemical. And the company would go on to pay an additional $670 million to said people. Okay, you'd think they would be out of money by now, but nope. After all this, DuPont finally stopped using PFOA. They made a new company, though, called Chemours. They use a similar compound that DuPont allegedly knew about for over 20 years, but it was just more costly, so I guess they didn't want to use it. But it's said to be safer and more biodegradable, but I find that hard to believe because this new compound is also unregulated. It's like our government wants them to poison and pick us off or something. Or maybe our government doesn't get a say, but I don't know. That's just so wrong. Because it wasn't their only whoopsie, In 2010, DuPont was ranked the 4th largest corporate source of air pollution in the United States. Another one of their facilities was listed number 4 on the Mother Jones Top 20 Polluters of 2010, also because they were dumping over 5 million pounds of toxic chemical waste into New Jersey and Delaware waterways. Okay, so you think you're safe. You're not safe anywhere, friends. Filter your water. Okay, are you hearing me, people? Another spill happened a year or two ago, I think in Ohio, dumping waste into the river again. Okay, once or twice is maybe an accident. This is just a slap in the face. It's blatant. They're doing this shit right in front of us on purpose because they know that they can get away with it. And they just don't care to even hide it anymore. I think it's for population control. I really do. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on. They cut corners. They don't follow proper procedures. And they just don't care. We say, oh, none of this is true. Or, let's just keep ignoring it. Keep allowing all this corruption because it's easier. But we're going to have to deal with the ramifications of these families' actions sooner or later. Oh, and of course, they were a part of a global climate coalition, a group that lobbied against acting against climate control. So basically, they're like, f*** the people, f*** the planet, f*** those turtles, f*** your oceans. We don't care if we destroy the planet, if we destroy everything. We don't care if we make people sick. This is what we're up against. It's actually really sad. Now, I guess this is the time where I switch gears a bit. We can officially put on our tinfoil hats. because we're diving deep into the pool with these conspiracies. All right. Now, there's this big word called chlorofluorocarbons. The invention of chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs. So, for my real tinfoil hat wearers who believe in like chemtrails in the sky, chlorofluorocarbons are an ozone depleting chemical that were primarily used in aerosol sprays and in our refrigerators. I don't know why on that one. I didn't get to research on that one, but Google it and get back to me, okay? But DuPont was, of course, the largest producer of CFC in the world with like a 25% market share or something crazy like that. So if you believe we're being poisoned through chemtrails in the sky, you can also thank DuPont. As if all that wasn't enough. The DuPonts have been said to be building like these sophisticated composite materials for state-of-the-art space and aviation vehicles. And many suspect these new age composite materials are finding their way into secret UFO bases like Area 51. And DuPont may be producing the parts necessary for anti-gravity machines. Maybe they're combining this new tech with some kind of alien tech they've had hidden, produce some space age bomb-assery for our military. I don't know. But that's crazy to think about. And I honestly don't hate them for that one if they're doing it, because that's cool. And you know what? While your BS radar may be blaring right now, take a beat and think about it, okay? Because we already know that they supply like all these parts to all the big name contractors like Boeing and Northrop and Lockheed. So why is it so wild to think that they may be building a spaceship or combining forces to be the leading supplier for future tech as well? It's not crazy at all. But while we're on that wavelength of extreme but absolutely possible and even probable, DuPont may be to blame for the Prohibition and Tax Act of marijuana in 1937. Boo! I need a boo button. Boo! Oh wait, I have a sad button. What does it do? It's not really the vibe I was feeling, but it's what we get. And it wasn't because of like a free thinking movement like we've been told, but because it interfered with their profits. Since they made nylon and all this fancy high-tech stuff and all those fancy schmancy toxic pee-pee shrinking chemicals and stuff, they were threatened with the use of hemp, of all things. And now we can really hate them, right? But this was a bunch of BS that should have never happened. It wasn't just because of hemp, it was because of the use of marijuana. It was competitive to big pharma. The DuPont supplies so many things to the pharmaceutical companies owned by Rothschilds to make our drugs and these vaccinations. Plus, when people are using marijuana to aid for pain or relief, it competes with the purchase and the use of these medical pain relievers. And that also affects the Rothschilds and DuPont's interests, since they own so many of these companies that produce these drugs. And on that note, hello, opioid crisis. Cannabis is non-addictive, and that gets in the way of their business as well. They don't want us to be able to grow it or harvest it because that interferes with their affairs. That gives us a little bit of freedom. I'm sure the free thinking movement also doesn't help the cause, but it's just sad if you think about it. Something that could help so many people, benefit so many people, it's still deemed so taboo because of this narrative that they created, this narrative that this family painted for decades about how the devil's lettuce or that grass, what it's going to do to you. It's going to make you go insane and jump out a window or something. It's awful. It's awful because something so beautiful has been deemed evil or, bad or whatever for too long because of these people. That's what I'm saying. It makes me feel like I'm a tiny little mouse in a big maze in like Rick and Morty's garage or something. Like, it really makes me feel helpless. And on top of everything, they also control our farming and what we eat. Ever wonder why the price of organic is so high at the grocery stores? It's because they drive up the price, so more people buy genetically modified food. And even organic can be a gimmick sometimes, but that's for another time. They also dominate this industry because of the use of their pesticides. All farmers have to spray their crops. Thanks DuPont Chemical. The DuPonts are leaders in producing the world's largest amount of GMO corn and soy. Today, actually, a DuPont company is one of the biggest world producers of these genetically modified organism seeds, or GMO seeds for short. But they are actually also founders of this doomsday treasury. Google it. It's a nickname for this massive underground freezer vault thing built to withstand atomic war. It's where they store the world's GMO farming seeds in case of the end of the world. I mean, are your eyebrows raised? Because I feel like mine hurt. They can't go any higher. But this is where samples of all the plants are preserved so that humankind can plant them again after the apocalypse. And with millions of gallons of water reserves that the Rothschilds are now hoarding, I think we can all guess why. I'm sure that they're planning to be reaping and sowing the rewards of that post-apocalyptic harvest together. So rude. Did you get an invitation? I did not. Now, we have to talk about the Illuminati because we're already in the crazy area of conspiracies, right? And today, the DuPonts have made it almost impossible to find anything recent tying the family to the group. However, the devil's in the details. You see what I did there? It goes back to the origination of their damn fam. I actually heard the reason some think that they promoted incest so much wasn't because of the fear of diluting their money. I mean, maybe, but to also keep their bloodline pure. And that's why some suspect an affiliation to the occult, because I guess it was a thing in Satanism that if you have pure blood, you may possess the power to reach the highest level or whatnot. But all that is chat room speculation. Their real connection was said to have begun with the marriage of Samuel DuPont to Anne Alexandrine Montesquieu. Oh, God. In 1737 in Paris, France. Although Anne was French Protestant, aka a Huguenot, she was known to be a medium. She actually went on to teach her young son about the spirit world, but when she died, Pierre ran away. Guess he didn't get along with Daddy. He was the first DuPont to rise to greatness and the first DuPont that can actually be connected directly to the Illuminati, dating back to the 1750s. Initially, Pierre was a watchmaker, but within a short time, he attracted the attention of several top Illuminati because he was, well, from what I read, brilliant. This kid apparently could translate Greek or Latin just by sight. Okay, if it's true, he was a prodigy, and he gained a lot of attention for his ability to write. And right did he. He went on to advocate various economic and political views that the Illuminati wanted to promote. It was at this time Pierre joined the Freemasons and at some point was Illuminized. But Pierre Samuel DuPont went on to be a key figure in attempts to create a national education system in both Poland, random, I know, and in this new U.S. The national education system was a Masonic Illuminati goal to try and control education. And hello, have you read our history books? It's like whitewashing to the maximum. Now let's talk about who Pierre's besties were. Thomas Jefferson, who was actually a Grand Orient Mason of the famous Nine Sisters Lodge, and Benjamin Franklin. Both key Illuminatus were very close friends of Pierre DuPont. Jefferson would seemingly do lots of favors for the family during his presidency. The biggest I can think of was arranging a contract with his gunpowder company. Then I read when Benjamin Franklin, who is also key leader of several secret occult fraternal groups, when he arrived in France in December 1776 when he lived there for a while. One of the first people he asked to see was his homeboy, Pierre Samuel DuPont. It was at this time also that Alexander Hamilton, remember whose family our first Secretary of the Treasury married into? Yeah, that guy. He was DuPont's lawyer in the U.S. And I mean, that doesn't tie necessarily into the Illuminati, but I feel like I had to mention it because you're starting to see this web of connections, yeah? Christian Illuminati researcher Fritz Springmeier deemed the DuPonts to be a top satanic family, ranking their bloodline at number 4 in his book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Fritz got most of his information from ex-Illuminati and ex-Satanists such as John Todd and other ex-members. Pierre's son, Victor Marie DuPont, grew up to be the personal assistant of this famous Illuminatus named Lafayette. Whether he was a Mason in France at that time is unknown, but he did get heavily involved after his immigration to the U.S., where he went on to have another son, following in their father's footsteps. Eleuthère Irene DuPont, and we all remember him. Hello, happy birthday. Happy birthday. Eleuthère DuPont was an outspoken Jacobin. And in short, the Jacobins were basically an Illuminized type of Freemasonry. With that, there's so many other connections with them, tying them to Freemasonry and all these other secret societies over the ages. What with the company they've kept and their great successes, we could go on forever. But I don't want to spend too much time focusing on lists. I want you all to form your own opinions by venturing out and doing a little digging yourself with what you've heard today. The DuPonts really are a family of kings, not only with their business empire, but maybe even kings within the satanic world. I don't know if we ever really will know the truth because they live in a world of secrecy. But with all the historical connections to very real groups, you can't deny the shady truth. And with what they've done in real life, I think we can all agree something's off kilter. And at the very least, they're all assholes, okay? Much is up to questioning the DuPonts. They've never recently confirmed or denied affiliation with the occult, like I said, not in recent years. However, they do still attend high society secret meetings every year, like Bilderberg meeting. Remember hearing about that? We know they remain affiliated in some way. In some way. At the very least, they're in the know of whatever is discussed in these meetings, and they keep it to themselves. One hopes they have all of our best intentions at heart when they attend, but they don't really have the best track record. It gives me the ick thinking about how we all likely have this chemical in our bodies because of this dynasty. And then to realize we all support them because they've monopolized so many different industries. We're so reliant on their products, unless we go completely incognito off the grid, we can't help it. We need their products. They know it. This is the control. This is the revolving door. If we bank with central institutions, if we buy food, water, our medications, anything really, we've supported these families. And it's so scary. This is what happens when shady people with all this power and control and money, they go unchecked for so long. They do take over the freaking world, guys. And it's definitely something that we all need to start paying attention to. It's not a bunch of extremists or conspiracists. If you don't believe them, believe the money. Believe the payoffs. Believe the settlements. I believe in the undeniable things they've been forced to take accountability for. The people that they've killed. Open your minds, friends. This shit needs to be talked about. Today, the DuPont dynasty is huge. The actual number of people in this family is estimated to have like 3,500 members, okay? So it's not even like a close family that you might be imagining anymore. It's an entire network of people. And by this time, I think that's how they're able to maintain such control because they have so many companies. And then they have their subsidiary companies. And then they have these, different accounts, different head of households. They virtually spread themselves everywhere. Thin enough they're see-through. And camouflaged in plain sight. Their net worth is only said to be $14.5 billion, supposedly. But again, that's just what's reported. Like if they had a DuPont family reunion and rounded up every person, it's vastly more. So, yeah. Let me know what you think. That's the DuPonts for you in a nutshell. They're involved in every facet of our lives. It's like Big Brother's always watching. But do some digging yourselves, because all that was mentioned was just the beginning, lovies. It is cosmic. Let us know what you find or what your thoughts on everything are so far, either on our email at hardtalkswithbnh@gmail.com or on the socials at Hard Talk Podcast. Next week, the Morgan Dynasty.